Hey, Team Coach A here. Today we're going to be going over Unit 2, Day 5, Mongols and Conquest. So, after reading World Leaders, Genghis Khan, learners will be able to summarize through 4 text-based questions, scoring 66% after revision, RH 910.2. So, today's focus is the all-important historical skill of summarization. But it's not just a historical skill. Let's be honest. If you are bad at summarization, you're probably a bad storyteller, and your friends wish you'd just wrap it up. Well, let's work on it. So, here are I can statements and guiding questions. Please review before moving on. So, we always talk about geography matters. So, here's the geography of Mongolia. It is sandwiched between Russia and China, with a small piece of Kazakhstan to the east, or west, pardon. And it all comes down to geography. So you're going to notice the green parts, of course, are greenlands, lands with grass and trees and whatnot. And the brown parts are hills and mountains. Mongolia is considered a steppe of the Asian steppe, which is hilly and mountainous, but some grass. Because of this, the Mongolian population has never been very large, even though at their peak they conquered lands as far as Europe and all the way to, well, the Pacific Ocean. And how'd they do it? Well, it's all about the weapons. So the recurve bow, the Mongol recurve bow, was one of the most important aspects of their conquest. They also used crossbows. But the recurve bow, in a normal bow that goes like this, your hand acts as the flex. As you pull, the two parts flex and release. The release is the momentum that carries the arrow. With a recurve bow, it moves the flex point and enables you to get more torque, aka more power. Their arrows could kill an enemy from 350 yards. The second part of their success is their horses. So, the Mongols were nomadic. Nomadic means that they did not live in one place for very long. They had livestock, sheep, goats, what have you, and they would graze. So they would move in a big circle. By the time that their herds had grazed the grass in the place that they just got back to, the grass would have risen right back again, and they were good to go again. That's why they did not live in traditional style houses. They lived in yurts, which were these tents that is pictured at the lower left-hand part of the screen. And often in the War Horde, it was yellow, giving them the title of Golden Horde. We'll get to that. The main aspect about this horseback lifestyle, though, it really helped them outmaneuver, outlast, and just be faster than their enemies, which were primarily stationary. And put a pin in that, because that's going to be important. And this brings us to Genghis Khan. Genghis Khan was their fiercest leader, and possibly one of the greatest conquerors in human history. He built the largest empire in history that stretched from Poland to China. 3.8 square miles were a part of the Mongol Empire, and 100 million people were underneath Mongol control. In the early 1200s, Genghis Khan led the Mongols to capture much of Asia. Their discipline, technology, strategy, ruthlessness helped the Mongols take control of Central Asia and northern China. He died in 1227, leaving the power to the next great Khan, which would be the leader of the Mongol Empire. Environmental impact. Yeah, kind of weird that I'm bringing up in the environment when I'm talking about a leader, but that was the type of leader Genghis Khan was. Not only did Genghis Khan conquer most of Eurasia, he also, well, he had 1 in 200 men on Earth trace their lineage to Genghis Khan. So if we have 200 people at the Vojim, one of them probably is a distant relative of Genghis Khan. He killed millions during his conquest. And again, it was because they had superior technology and superior horses primarily. And this scrubbed 700 million tons of carbon from the atmosphere. So people who perished at the hands of Genghis Khan were not there to chop down trees to heat their homes. And because of that, well, the forest started to grow back. They were taking more carbon dioxide out of the air, which produced more oxygen. Literally helped the environment. And he helped it even more by spreading the Black Death, because the Black Death killed, well, the number one cause of Earth destruction, humans. It wasn't just destruction with Genghis Khan, though. He deeply believed in reinvigorating transcontinental trade. So he rebuilt the Silk Road and protected traders as they traveled. Even though after everything I've just said, he codified everything in a surprisingly progressive way. First off, he forbade the selling of women. He forbade theft, and he exempted poor from taxation. He also implemented a meritocracy in the military. A meritocracy is that who is the strongest will lead. And he broke apart traditional clans and put the strongest together in groups of 10, 20, 100. And we know a lot about this because of their contact with Europeans, mostly Marco Polo. Marco Polo, as we talked about earlier in this unit, he traveled to China and met Kublai Khan, the grandson of Genghis Khan. He was so impressed with Marco Polo that he hired him to be a personal representative. We know about this because Ruscello de Pisa wrote the travels of Marco Polo, dictated to him from Marco Polo while the two were in prison in Genoa. That's how we know most about the Yuan dynasty in China. Speaking of the Yuan dynasty, so they often used the violence to capture the cities, which led to the Europeans calling them the Golden Horde. So they broke down the kingdom into smaller called khanates, but the three major khanates are led by his grandsons, Kublai, Hualgo, and Batu. And they conquered the east, the south, and the west, respectively. So, as you can see here in this map, by 1294, the Mongols had conquered most of Asia and are pushing into Europe. And you can see the three of them in their forked directions of conquest. So let's look at the Golden Horde, which went towards Europe. So this group of Mongols overran Russia between 1237 and 1241. They were led by Batu Khan between 1224, and 1255. They further overran Poland, Hungary, and East Germany in 1241 to 1242, but then abruptly turned back. Maintained the hegemony in Russia until the mid-15th century. What this means is the fact that whereas they no longer ruled as the Mongol Empire in Russia, it was the descendants of Genghis Khan and the Mongol Empire. So Mongols worked to secure trade routes and ensure safety of merchants. Again, they're nomadic. They don't make stuff. So they have to trade for the stuff they have. So trade was very important to the Mongol Empire. They had an elaborate courier network with relay stations, like we talked about in Unit 1 with the Royal Road. A horse can only travel about 200 miles in a day. So if you put relay stations every 200 miles, you can bring notes from very far distances. This maintained good order for traveling merchants, ambassadors, and missionaries. Then there's Persia and the Ilkhanate of Persia. Kublai's brother Hidalgo will capture Baghdad in 1258. Now, Baghdad has walls around it, and this is the absolute peak of the Muslim empires at the height of science and progress. But unfortunately, the walls, which they believed to keep the Mongols out, the Mongols used to keep the Persians in, as they would catapult bubonic plague-ridden bodies into the city and just waited the locals out. So once they took over, they did keep the Persians in positions of power, and they cared basically only about taxation. So Ghazan which becomes the leader, will convert to Islam in 1295, but it doesn't grossly change the structure of the Mongol Empire. This is until the Black Death ravages the Ilkhanate, and the last ruler will die without an heir and eventually collapse in 1349. Which brings us to the decline of the Mongol Empire. So in Unit 2, Day 1, we talked about what happened to the Yuan dynasty, who were thrown out by the Ming dynasty. The Middle East Empire would degrade into small fiefdoms, and eventually the Safavids would utilize the infrastructure to rebuild the Persian Empire. And remember when I said earlier that they abruptly turned around as they got to Poland and Russia? Well, scientists now believe that the Golden Horde turned around at Hungary because of increased floods that would deplete their food supplies, quite possibly because of the economic or environmental impact of Genghis Khan. And that's it for the day. So, remember, please, I'm begging you, if you don't know how to annotate your article, go ahead and review the video that should be around here somewhere on how to properly annotate. Otherwise, I'll see you next time. Be smart, be safe. Please subscribe. Bye, guys.